country in any way it could after a spike in anti-Semitic incidents following Israel-Palestine clashes. Johnson adds that we will not let it take root, we will not allow it to grow and fester. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken to meet his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Iceland in a short while from now for the first time since President Joe Biden took office. The meeting aims to gauge the enormous gulf between the rival powers and confirm a potential summit between Presidents Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin. EU member states agreed to reopen the bloc's borders to travellers who have been fully vaccinated against coronavirus since March 2020. Non-essential travel into the 27-member European Union has been banned. Engineers in China are inspecting a skyscraper in the southern city of Shenzhen near Hong Kong after it triggered widespread panic when it suddenly began shaking as people asked online if shoddy construction may have been to blame. The International Olympic Committee reassures an anxious Japan that the Tokyo Olympics would be safe for athletes as well as the host community amid mounting opposition that the Games will fuel a spike in COVID-19 cases.
Hello and welcome to the second edition of the Ambassadors Roundtable. We witnessed a major strategic shift this month. It began with a virtual summit between the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson. The Indian Prime Minister followed this up with a joint meeting of leaders from the European Union. India is embracing Europe, and recent events have only strengthened India's relationship with the region. The European Union rushed rapid assistance to India amid this deadly second wave. How does Europe assess India's surge? How is the pandemic changing the relationship? And what does the future hold for the India-EU partnership? We have a very special panel of guests to discuss all of this and more today. The European Union's ambassador to India, Hugo Astuto, Portugal's ambassador to India, Carlos Pereira Marques, the Dutch ambassador to India, Marten van den Berg, and Ireland's ambassador to India, Brendan Ward. Thank you very much, ambassadors, for joining us here on WION. Ambassador Astuto, in recent days, we have seen a fall in numbers in India, and you witnessed India's fall and surge and then a fall again. How do you assess India's second wave and India's response to what has happened?
Thank you. Well, look, this epidemic has proved a very severe challenge for all of us. It has been coming in waves. Europe has been severely touched not so long ago. Now, unfortunately, India is bearing the brunt of the storm. I think what's essential is that the international community addresses the challenge in a spirit of solidarity and mutual support. That's what India has been doing in the past few months by continuing to keep supply chains open when customers couldn't make it, exporting back and forth. And that's what the European Union is also trying to do. The European Union, its member states, as you said, we have been trying to help with some essential equipment and material, and as we speak, in the last weeks or so, and we will continue to do so. So the point is that we need to help each other. We are in this together, and we can only get out of this predicament together.
Ambassador Marques, I understand that relations between two countries are based on national interest. But I would like to believe that an element of the personal also plays a role. You have a personal connection with India. Your father, Orlando da Costa, was born to a family of Goan descent. How has your own relationship with India shaped your response and, by extension, perhaps your country's response to India's crisis?
I was telling that our response came on a very natural and obvious way. You know, at the beginning of the year, Portugal was one of the best EU member states in COVID-wise. Suddenly, we became one of the worst, and so we were obliged to impose a very strict lockdown for more than 3 months, from January to March. And this only proves what we already knew, that this pandemic is made of ups and downs, and that the situations may change very suddenly. And at that time, we could count with the support of India, with the friendship of India, and it was very rewarding. And so now that India is in need, it was for us something very natural and obvious to give some support, even a modest support to India. That's what we did, thanks to the EU civil protection mechanism. And I think this is a global challenge, and so just through a global approach, we may overpass this situation.
Ambassador Marten Berg, last month the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, described India as a crucial partner in the Indo-Pacific and the world at large. What do you make of Europe's collective response to India's second wave, and do you believe that this new emerging strategic partnership has a role to play in how Europe has stood up for India?
Yeah, I think the partnership between the EU and India, and also, of course, between the Netherlands and India is extremely important. India is really, like the EU, a key global player, especially in this pandemic, which is a global challenge. We're all in the same boat. We have to work in so many areas very, very closely together, which we actually do. And I think the partnership between the EU is very important. Basically, we are in many areas very like-minded partners, thinking about how to structure markets, how to address global health issues, how to innovate. So I think on security issues, so it's very important that we see an increasingly partnership between the EU in so many areas, but especially today on the issue of health and addressing the COVID challenge.
Ambassador Brendan Ward, Europe at large has witnessed at least 3 major waves by now, and Europe has seen some of the worst of this pandemic. What are the learnings from Europe's experiences that India and others can apply to contain the virus and crush the surge?
Well, I suppose the most important lesson is to avoid complacency. The fact that we are in a downward period or a downward trend in terms of cases does not mean that the crisis is over. This is equally true in Ireland as it is in India, where we are just at the moment coming out of a fairly severe 3-month lockdown. As some international experts have pointed out, none of us are safe until all of us are safe. So that efforts on the vaccination front are extremely important and must be continued and stepped up, both in India and throughout the world.
Ambassador Astuto, earlier this month, the EU and India agreed to resume stalled negotiations around a comprehensive trade deal. What kind of an impact has the pandemic had on these discussions, if any? Has it affected the agenda for discussions and perhaps has it led to a shift in priorities in this relationship?
Well, I would say that the meeting on the 8th of May has taken place against the backdrop of this major pandemic. So inevitably, the issue of how to address this health crisis has been coming to the fore. And a major message emerging from the meeting was a message of solidarity. That has, in a way, shaped the whole conversation among leaders. The strategic partnership between the European Union, its member states, and India goes well beyond that in any case. And that's why at the meeting, and this is reflected by the outcomes of the meeting, by the wide array of topics which have been touched upon, and the actual deliverables, including what you mentioned, the decision to resume negotiation for an ambitious, comprehensive and balanced free trade agreement, and in parallel negotiation for an investment protection agreement and the geographical indication agreement. The European Union is already one of the largest trade partners of India, one of the largest investors, but still I think we share the sentiment that we can do much more. That if you look at the size of our respective economies, if you look at the intensity of people-to-people relations, actually we can do more to unleash the full potential of our economic relations. That's what we mean to do now, and that's the spirit of the decisions taken at the leaders' meeting.
Ambassador Marques, last year the International Monetary Fund predicted that the cumulative loss to the global GDP from this pandemic could be around $9 trillion. This is bigger than the economies of Japan and Germany combined. It is clear that countries and governments are going to have to unlock new economic opportunities for a revival. In your opinion, what are the most promising avenues and opportunities that India and Europe can explore and offer together?
I was saying that, as you for sure know, Portugal is now the president of the European Union. And from the outset, we choose 5 big objectives for our presidency: the digital transition, the green transition, the social transition, because we think we have to prepare our citizens for the digital and green transition, the openness to the world, because we think that in a multipolar world we need to have diversified and balanced and stable relationships, and finally the resilience. And the resilience, of course, against the negative economic effects of the pandemic, which are going to be huge, as you referred, and also resilience against the pandemic, on the fight of the pandemic itself. And of course, here the resilience of the medical supply chains are very important. All these issues were also discussed at the EU-India leaders meeting. It was organized, as you know, at the 8th of May by the initiative of the Portuguese presidency. And all these issues were largely discussed. As Ambassador Astuto was saying, the meeting took place in spite of the pandemic, and the 8th of May we were at the peak, perhaps at the peak of the second wave of the pandemic in India, and this only shows how crucial, how fundamental it is the EU-India relationship, because the meeting could have been postponed or cancelled, but it wasn't, and so this proves really how important is the relationship. And of course, the pandemic was also largely discussed with all these implications.
Indeed, this is a very crucial relationship, and I believe all sides appreciate the significance of this. Ambassador Marten van Berg, across Europe, restrictions are now being lifted. Some of you spoke about how lockdowns are being lifted in your respective countries. The Netherlands is easing travel curbs for Europeans. What kind of measures is your government going to take to avoid another wave?
Well, first of all, for us, it's very important to track and tracing, to keep to monitor closely what is happening in your society. Secondly, very important to inform on behavior. Of course, we know that cases are going down, also in the Netherlands, but also in Europe. Doesn't mean we are at the end of the pandemic. But most important is, of course, vaccination. So we very much stimulate our people to get their vaccination. We are doing quite well in terms of how many people are vaccinated. And we have a close collaboration with other EU countries in coordination of policies. And we're working in the European Union with a kind of a vaccination or a certificate which makes transparent whether people are vaccinated, they are recently tested, they just had COVID. So to make transparent and well known to anyone what the risks are of people if people start traveling around. But hopefully we can, during the summer, open our countries and open our economies, because, it's very important that we see a recovery of economic growth. And for that, especially for certain countries, it's important that tourists are able to visit each other countries again.
Right. Ambassador Brendan Ward, Irish leader Leo Varadkar said that life will return to normal in Ireland by the month of August. What is your country's and your government's roadmap for lifting lockdowns and restrictions?
Well, we are lifting lockdowns and restrictions quite gradually. There is a phased approach to this, and At the moment, we are in the process of permitting businesses, shops, restaurants, bars, places of entertainment and that to reopen. We are gradually lifting the restrictions on group gatherings and public events. And as Dr. Bradker said, by the middle of August, we are confident that it will be possible to more or less eliminate all of the restrictions which are in place and have been in place for the last few months.
Ambassador Astuto, vaccines are the world's best bet for normalcy. I believe everyone agrees with this, but not everyone can get a shot. Now, India and South Africa have pushed for a waiver on vaccine patents, and the head of the European Commission has said that the bloc is ready to discuss this. But we reported this yesterday. A Brussels-based watchdog has found that since last year, European commissioners have met pharma lobbyists 140 times, but advocates for a vaccine patent waiver have got just one high-level meeting. There's an obvious gap here. Why is that?
Well, I think we meet everybody and we meet all stakeholders, and it's important, obviously, that we have this discussion. It's an important discussion. We are ready to engage in it. I should also say that we believe the priority remains to ramp up the production of vaccines worldwide, globally, and to keep supply chains open. I think that's the key objective we have to set ourselves as international community. So we believe on the need to have vaccines available at an affordable price to all those who need them. And that's why we have been supporting the COVAX facility since its beginning. And that's why we are, as European Union, together with its member states, one of the major contributors to the COVAX facility. And in the same vein, the European Union has been exporting as many vaccines as delivered domestically. So we have exported around 200 million vaccines to around 90 countries. So I think that's the very tangible evidence of the fact that the approach we are taking in the European Union to the issue is an approach grounded in solidarity.
Ambassador Marques, Portugal is the president of the EU Council. The United States has given its backing to a temporary patent waiver. But Europe, which also has one of the biggest vaccine stockpiles, remains split on how to go about this. Do you agree that the developed world, which has more than 50% of the global vaccine supply, may be denying equitable access to the rest of the world?
Yes. Well, as Ambassador Astuto just said, it is a very complex issue. And as the President of the European Commission very clearly said in Oporto on the 8th of May, after the New England leaders meeting, we are ready to discuss the TRIPS waiver, and we are discussing it actually. But now our priority is to move forward with the short term, and the short term is to move forward with the vaccination process to speed up the production of vaccines. We may even study other possibilities. For instance, the transfer of technology between the countries who actually produce the vaccines is something also very important. And so we are open to discuss all the possibilities. But it's, of course, a very complex situation, and one that we cannot solve, unfortunately, in a short term. Thank you.
Right, but time is of the essence. Ambassador Marten Vandenberg, by the month of January this year, 2021, the European Commission, according to most reports, had invested more than 460 million euros in 105 pandemic-related research projects. And out of these, more than 170 million euros had gone towards the development of vaccines, including the Pfizer-BioNTech shot. If Europe is funding vaccine development using public money, is it wise to let Big Pharma control the patents?
Well, the way the markets for vaccines are working is quite complicated. So I think, as I said earlier by my colleagues, a patent waiver is, I don't think, the solution for a short-term shortages on vaccines. I think we need other solutions, because to expand your production of vaccines, it requires really very innovative and complex production manufacturing processes. It also requires very complex organizing for complex supply chains. That's not easily done by a company who has no experiences in it. So that takes time. Then in the longer term, we have to ask ourselves, in what way does a market for medicines and vaccines work properly? And part of the discussion is IP waivers. Part of the discussion is how to work with R&D subsidies, R&D research programs, but also on innovations, on inputs, but also trade policies. So it's, I think, a discussion we have to have in an international platform, how we address these challenges. But I don't think there are easy answers for this very complex discussion, how a market of vaccines and medicines work.
I agree, there are no easy answers. Ambassador Brendan Ward, considering the vaccine shortages around the world and a lack of consensus on the approach, do you believe the global recovery will at best be patchy this year?
That's true. Some countries are doing better than others. Even within the European Union, there are disparities between the economic performance of the member states. But this is not solely due to the vaccine situation. There are other issues, including restrictions on travel, including the perennial trade issues, which will also affect this. But that said, it's true that an efficient rollout of vaccine globally would probably provide a stimulus to the global economic recovery.
Right, we're waiting, as all of you have said, that this needs a detailed discussion on an international platform. But I'm glad all of you could join us today and share your thoughts with us. Thank you very much for being with us here on WION. Stay safe.